911, where's your emergency?
My roommate just collapsed. He's bleeding from one ear and his nose.
Is he breathing?
He's breathing very shallow.
The case of Alex Bello-Ortiz is very much about what you hear and what you see. The 22-year-old college student and cadet of the year was found dead from a gunshot wound inside his off-campus home in Florida in 2020. Police in Daytona Beach ruled that Alex took his own life, so they closed the case. But Alex's family and friends say there is no way Alex did this.
You know, he's a beacon of optimism. There's nothing wrong with him.
And it's not just them. Retired detectives, crime scene, and ballistics experts say the evidence points to someone else pulling the trigger.
2 people in a house alone. 1 ends up dead.
Alex's case hinges on a patchwork of Ring doorbell footage, police body cam recordings, and a scattered 911 call, each capturing fragments of the truth. Separately, they don't tell the full story, but together, coupled with a mother's intuition,
something didn't feel right.
Perhaps they do. This investigation will challenge you to listen closely. There clearly was a struggle, and then there's a gunshot. To watch closely, to consider the documentation closely. It's something experts say the Daytona Beach Police Department did not do.
This was a complete disaster for a police investigation.
You think there should be an investigation of the investigators? We reached out to the Daytona Beach Police Department for comment.
Hi, is the chief there?
Hoping to discuss how they handled Alex's case, but they never got back to us.
There was a mountain of evidence.
On this episode of Law&Crime Investigates, we will give you all the facts, and you can decide for yourself what you think really happened to Alex Bello-Ortiz.
The penalty is death.
Get your family out of here.
Why me?
I will have my attorney call you.
So unbelievable.
He was my only son, my life, my world. He had huge plans for the future, and somebody cut those off.
Why do you think your son was murdered?
I think he found out something. I think he discovered something.
In September 2020, Alex Bello-Ortiz was finishing up his last year at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. He was studying electrical engineering and wanted to work at NASA. He was a cadet with the Air Force Reserves and had just been named Cadet of the Year and the morale officer of his detail. Alex was living in a small 3-bedroom house his parents had bought him near the university. He had just gotten 2 brand new roommates, fellow students at Embry-Riddle. On the morning of September 6, 2020, a seemingly happy Alex, having just returned from surfing, can be seen on Ring video in his backyard working on various projects.
Tell me what's going on in this video.
He has the mulch, he has the thing that he built.
Tending to his garden, doing Tai Chi, smiling and waving to a neighbor. It was 11 a.m. Lourdes had just gotten off the phone with Alex. He was supposed to call her back. Approximately 50 minutes later, Lourdes, armed with mother's intuition, feels something isn't right with her son. She triggers the backyard Ring camera, which has a direct view of Alex's bedroom. She looks around and doesn't see anything, so she disconnects, but the Ring camera keeps recording. Moments later, at 11:55 a.m., a gunshot rings out. Almost 4 minutes later, at 11:59, Alex's roommate of 2 weeks, 22-year-old John Burlein, calls 911.
911, where's your emergency?
My roommate just collapsed. He's bleeding from one ear and his nose.
What was he doing before he became unconscious?
He was cleaning.
He is still breathing, correct?
Yes.
John is the only person in the house with Alex at the time of the gunshot. We know that because a Ring camera looking out the front window caught the other roommate, Robert, leaving for a run at 11:43. Robert returns at 12:02, 7 minutes after the shooting. He's surprised to find he can't open the front door.
Robert!
The den couch is up against the door. The Ring camera on the windowsill inside the house captures Robert having to push the door open. We can hear what happens next on the 911 call.
He was cleaning, running around, and then I heard him collapse.
Do you feel any air coming in and out of his mouth?
No.
Are you guys starting CPR?
Yes. We need an ambulance, please.
Minutes later, EMS responds. Alex is still clinging to life. They get him onto a stretcher and take him to the hospital. That's when Alex's mom, Lourdes, who lives in Virginia, gets a call from one of Alex's friends.
I got a call saying Alex passed out and he has a little bit of blood in his nose. And that's when I said, we need to go to Florida. Something is wrong with Alex. Something is wrong with Alex. Then I get a call from the doctor. He tells me that Alex has a shot in the head and he's completely brain dead. There's nothing I can do for her. I collapsed in the middle of the airport.
Back in Florida, EMS has called Daytona Beach police after finding a loaded rifle next to Alex's body. Police arrive on scene nearly 2 hours later, leaving a potential crime scene completely unattended.
The young man was in the bedroom, a lot of blood from the head, looked almost like a trauma code. He said he went on a jog, came back, found him that way. Just massive amounts of blood, didn't really make sense what was going on. Ended up finding that a .22 rifle kind of by him, one in the chamber. We couldn't see next to him, but it was 22, so we don't know from the look of it whether it was self-inflicted or not. So that's why we called you guys.
Around this time, Lourdes and her husband, Harold Dolph, Alex's stepfather, arrive at the hospital in Florida.
Alex was in ICU and has all the tubes and stuff like that. And I looking at my son and I'm like, he looks like he's sleeping, but I'm trying to understand what happened.
When they told you your son shot himself in the head,
it just did not make sense.
It was not something possible for me. Alex never had depression, has never had an issue that would create that event.
Doctors show Lourdes and Harold the x-rays of the bullet in Alex's head, saying they believe Alex put the rifle into his mouth and fired. Later forensic tests would show that Alex had no gunshot residue on either of his hands.
I'm looking at his face and there's no burning on his face, there's no damage to his lips, no soot in his mouth, nothing made sense.
Who was here when this happened?
Me. I was out for a run.
You were here?
Yeah, we were cleaning up in here. He was folding his clothes. I went back into my room on your left, and then I heard something come from here. It didn't sound like a gunshot.
At this point, police have not located a shell casing, so no one knows if a gun actually went off. That's why they're asking John what he heard.
I thought the sound I heard was him collapsing, but...
If he collapsed, where would he have knocked over?
I have no idea.
That would make a bunch of noise.
It sounded like a pile of stuff had fallen down.
John begins to give unsolicited advice to the officer about what may have happened to Alex.
He's right-handed, right? Yeah, sure, I think so. Yeah, I mean, if he shot himself, it was with his left hand, and then he fell, hand out on the gun, perfectly just straight down.
Casing could be a lot of places.
John leaves the bedroom. Seconds later, he walks back into the room and makes a beeline right for Alex's desk. And out of the mess on the desk, he pulls out a box of ammunition and starts going through it in front of the officer, potentially contaminating evidence. John throws the box of ammunition onto Alex's bed, and that's exactly where police take a picture of it as part of the crime scene photos. Crime scene photos are part of the official police record. They're meant to capture exactly how things were at the moment of death. But that box of ammunition, it wasn't on Alex's bed when the shooting happened. And that's not the only thing that's moved. Next time, it's the officer himself who moves things around. We'll get to that, but first, the officer goes to search for the shell casing. As the officer is looking in Alex's closet, his body cam catches something strange. A nearly perfect straight line of Alex's blood coming from Alex's bathroom before the large pool of blood. Police would never discuss that line of blood in their official investigation. They also would never mention a handprint on the wall near Alex's blood that can be seen in the crime scene photos. Why didn't police investigate those two potentially critical pieces of evidence? The puzzling police work continues on as the officer moves bags and blankets around in Alex's closet, tossing them right into the pool of Alex's blood, contaminating a potential crime scene. The officer eventually finds the shell casing in the closet.
There it is.
Oh, wow.
I didn't hear that. Maybe it is what I heard. It sounded like something falling over.
Does he usually have this rifle out?
He said it was disassembled, like last time we saw it.
But it was laying on the floor here.
Yeah, this was spun that way.
Alex's roommate Robert is not the only one surprised that the rifle is fully assembled.
Are you a roommate too?
No, I'm a friend.
Their friend, who arrives at the scene minutes later, is shocked.
A gun?
He has his 22.
Oh, not assembled.
It was.
What?
Why does that surprise you?
Because the 22 is not normally assembled.
He was saying before like that it wasn't assembled.
He did say he was planning on assembling it because he wanted to go to the range.
All the confusion is enough to prompt a responding sergeant to finally ask the men to leave the house.
Let's treat this like a suicide/homicide scene. Let's get these guys out of the house.
Okay.
And lock it down, because I'm not convinced that it may just be a suicide attempt, maybe an accident.
I was kind of curious about that.
Let's just step outside. We're going to lock the house down for right now, so we can determine what exactly happened with him.
Outside, the officer asked the men how Alex had been acting lately.
You know, he's a beacon of optimism. There's nothing wrong with him. Always in a good mood. I've never seen him in a bad one, to be honest with you. I've known him for over a year now.
You found him in there, right?
Yeah.
How was he positioned when you found him?
I entered this way, and this was his dresser, and he was 8 inches from the dresser, about parallel to it. I don't know what his left hand was like. I remember his right arm was stuck underneath him, because I had to drag it out so I could move him, or I was going to move him on his side when his heart stopped. I had thought it was like just a BB gun or something. It was laying, almost perfectly next to him. I thought that he just, he did just fall next to it. And then I kind of shoved it a little bit out of the way. Not too much, but...
Inside Alex's bedroom, the sergeant inspects the rifle. He notices something strange.
I don't see any real blood on the end of the back. Should be at his mouth. There should be a bunch of blood in there.
All right, let's stop here for a second. Look at where the rifle is, on top of a stack of plastic bins. That is not where it was when police first arrived. It's policing 101, that in death investigations, no evidence should be moved anywhere. So how did the rifle get on top of the bins? The responding officer put it there. We watched him on his own body cam move the rifle, a potential murder weapon, around the crime scene 4 times, from the floor to the dresser, from the dresser back to the floor. 15 minutes later, from the floor back onto the dresser again. And that time, he takes a bullet which EMS had cleared from the weapon, and puts it back in the gun. Eventually, he places the rifle on the stack of bins, the exact place where the crime scene technician photographs the weapon for the official police file.
Not one piece of evidence was in its original place, so by the time you had the crime scene investigator come in, she's photographing things that have already been moved. This is insane.
You need the rifle put back?
No.
This was a complete disaster for a police investigation. Officers picking things up and putting them down. That is an absolute no-no. The only time you pick up anything is when you're going to collect it for evidence.
Steve Chancellor is a crime scene analyst. As the former director of the cold case unit at the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations, he specializes in studying, teaching, and testifying on crime scenes. Alex's parents hire him to review the body cam. What was the first thing you noticed?
There was no attempt to secure the scene. Every death should be looked at as a homicide until you can prove otherwise.
Careful walking through the blood.
Inside the crime scene itself, the bedroom, there was like 4 people. I saw John Burlein kneel down, search underneath the bed. They completely went against every crime scene protocol that you could think of. As a law enforcement professional for about 50 years now, I was embarrassed.
This is a pickle. What do you think went down here?
Never know what's going on.
Yeah.
Daytona Beach police are on scene for an hour and 40 minutes before wrapping it up.
I had it as the report as attempted suicide.
All right, I appreciate it. It's kind of a tough scene, but you did a good job.
Yeah, a little, it's different for sure than the usual
Right.
that we do.
That was definitely a lot more of an investigation. So.
Police don't lock up the house. They leave it with John and Robert. They're tenants, not even the owners of the property. The owners are Lourdes and Harold. Around 11 o'clock that night, Harold, who has a background in law enforcement, decides he needs to get to the house to check things out for himself.
Nothing is making sense, and evidence is critical.
So you walk in the house. What is the first thing that you notice?
As soon as we opened the door, cracked it open, just the smell of bleach and chlorine was almost overwhelming. And as I'm walking in, I look over and the Ring camera's disassembled in sort of 2 pieces on the windowsill.
That would be this camera. The one that sits on the windowsill shoots out the front window and captures the front door. Okay, so the Ring was
Literally disassembled, so it was in 2 pieces. You're just in such shock. You're like, okay, noted, this is bizarre. We got to the bedroom and walk into a bedroom, pristine. It wasn't an ounce, the bed was made, nothing was disarray.
Absolutely clean.
No evidence of blood or anything.
confused and questioning what he's seen. Harold returns to the hospital where he and Lourdes have to make the hardest decision of their lives, to let Alex go and donate his organs. That decision must have been,
yeah.
I don't even know if there's words to describe it, really.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was not easy at all. The whole thing it doesn't have a name.
The tragic and sudden loss of Alex Bello-Ortiz ripples through his military and school communities.
He would look out for you, he would find you, seek you out if you're ever having a bad day, and do everything in his willpower to make you have a better day.
I have pictures of us on my wall, because he's somebody you meet once in a lifetime. And when you meet somebody like that, you can't let them go.
None of it made sense. He was beyond excited about this house, about a surfboard. He was excited about everything.
The Volusia County Medical Examiner rules Alex's death a suicide without ever speaking to Alex's family and friends. The ME says she believes Alex took his own life after reviewing in part the Ring videos of Alex before his death. She notes that he was laughing and talking to himself. Nothing about that video of him in the backyard is odd to you.
No, absolutely.
As his mother.
Alex is full of energy, person that leaps around, and his positivity is like bursts out of him. And when he's doing something, he's talking. That's him.
The ME says Alex may have been under the influence of drugs because detectives found that the year prior, Alex had downloaded a book on psychedelic mushrooms. Police say they heard Alex asking his roommates on the Ring camera to do shrooms with him just prior to the shooting.
I got a great idea. Let's shrooms.
But Alex's blood drawn at the hospital showed absolutely no evidence of drugs in his system. Did Alex do drugs?
No.
No evidence of drugs was found in his room.
Nothing. There was absolutely nothing in his room and nothing in his body.
And the police comment was, he must be on drugs because he's out there in his underwear. Are you kidding me? Then I looked. If you notice the camera, he goes back to the shed to get the generator. He doesn't stagger. He goes straight down. He picks it up. He comes back. He would have passed the field sobriety test. So where's your drugs?
But the Daytona Beach Police Department defers to the medical examiner, saying they too believed Alex was, quote, under the influence of a dissociative substance that may have caused him to shoot himself in the head. Do you think Alex shot himself in the mouth?
No, there was no evidence of that.
Dr. William Anderson is a former medical examiner and spent more than a decade as the deputy chief medical examiner in Orlando. Lourdes and Harold hired him to review Alex's autopsy.
You don't have any blood on the barrel. If it's inside the mouth, you're going to see a lot of injury inside the mouth, which were not there. That's a big red flag. Well, hello, the mouth is open, that's how that occurs. And I had several cases, where that's happened, shot from across the room.
Only days after Alex died, Lourdes and Harold go back to look at the Ring videos because they know something isn't right. They review the footage from the outdoor back camera, which has a direct view of Alex's bedroom. Remember, Lourdes herself had turned this camera on remotely, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary at the time. Now that she and her husband are reviewing it together in light of their son's death, what they hear horrifies them.
Before the shot, another voice, clearly another person.
That long, oh, that's Alex.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you think that was about? That noise.
The wall is like Alex has that way of saying when he gets surprised by something. Like, whoa.
Then Lourdes and Harold review the Ring footage from the cameras at the front of the house, and something clicks. That smell of bleach suddenly makes sense. At 4 p.m., the video shows John's father, Joseph Burlein, with John, Robert, and their friend, carrying cleaning supplies, including mops and gallons of bleach, into the house. I reviewed Joseph Burlein's phone records, which Alex's parents obtained through a subpoena. They show that at 2:56 p.m. and 3:10 p.m., he called 2 crime cleanup companies. Joseph Burlein would later testify that they cleaned Alex's room to save Alex's family from having to witness the horrifying scene. This is a good time to point out that we reached out to John and Joseph Burlein's attorney several times to discuss this entire case with them. Their attorney never got back to us. So we know we have the exterior view of the men going into the house. I wanted to review the footage from the interior camera, which would show the men entering the house. It would have caught any conversation that not only happened as they were going in and out, but also as they were cleaning inside. But here's the thing, that camera had stopped working. This is the last shot it took. It was 1 hour before at 3 p.m. Someone is sitting on the windowsill. And remember, Harold says the Ring camera was in pieces on the windowsill when he arrived at the house much later that night.
So, to me, it seems absolutely intentional that something like this had happened, to not capture conversation or whatever was going on inside that house.
Realizing that the Ring videos may hold more clues, Lourdes and Harold go back to September 5th, the day before Alex was shot. At 3:30 in the morning, John and his friends can be seen leaving the house. Alex's parents suspect Alex had kicked the guys out because later, through a subpoena, they were able to find a text message from 2 hours before in which a friend asked Alex if he was, quote, kicking them out.
I know Alex's character. He doesn't tell you to get out because he's a very welcome, unless there's something really, really wrong.
It makes Lourdes think back to a conversation she had with Alex a few days prior.
I call every day to him. We talk every day. So I call him and say, how you doing? It was a short call, but his voice was different. So I call him again and say, Papa, is everything okay? And he said, well, Mom, I might have to change one of my roommates. And I said, okay, but I don't want you to worry about it. I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. So we were piecing this together and saying there was something going on.
Lourdes and Harold immediately turn all the videos over to police.
Everything that we find in the house, we bring it to them, calling them every week. Did you get anything? Did you have anything?
Lourdes says when police finally listened to the videos, which was months later, they say they didn't see or hear anything concerning. At any point did the police say to you, it was a suicide, stop pushing this?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Lourdes and Harold fight back, partnering with Mark Pucci, a retired NYPD detective and founder of the National Institute for Law and Justice, a nonprofit dedicated to providing free investigative services for families. You believe Alex was murdered?
Absolutely.
Pucci and Alex's parents pressure the Daytona Beach Police Department to send the audio out for enhancement. In the meantime, Lourdes and Harold have their own forensic audio examiner review the ring videos. The forensic analyst says she hears 2 male voices on the clip before the gunshot. This is what the analyst claims to hear in the video.
So that means there were 2 people in the room. They were not having tea. They were fighting.
There clearly was a struggle. And then there's a gunshot.
Yep.
But the Daytona Beach Police Department says they only hear one voice, and they don't hear any of what the forensic analyst does. Despite the mounting evidence, the Daytona Beach Police Department is unwilling to pursue a homicide investigation. Lourdes and Harold hire an attorney and demand police take another look at the case. There's a reason they've grown even more suspicious. You end up finding out that there was a misfire of a gun in the house.
Yeah, absolutely.
After the shooting, John and Robert continue to live in the house. Remember, Lourdes and Harold still own the place, and they've had John and Robert sign a lease that states they know there are cameras in the house and they're being recorded. On July 15th, 2021, at 3 in the morning, 10 months after the death of Alex Bello-Ortiz, you can hear a conversation about someone accidentally firing off a gun inside the house. The bullet flies right into Robert's bedroom wall.
My God. Dude, no way Robert doesn't notice that in the morning. I literally went, boom. And all I heard was, it took a second for it to register in my head. I understand why you don't conceal carry, but with alcohol, yes. We're not telling anyone about this. Shot a hole in the wall. And he literally says, just hang something on the wall or put a stick there. Alex died before he gave John and Robert the keys, so we can't open the shed to get the paint to cover that. I mean, you gotta fill it first, yeah. Yeah, I mean with putty. So the strategy's gonna be, yeah, me and John got really drunk and we punched a hole in the wall with a pen.
A year later, Lourdes and Harold are in the house and notice a strange piece of plaster on a hallway wall. They hire a ballistics technician to carefully tear it open, and lo and behold, he finds a bullet surrounded in plaster.
Not only was it lodged in there, but there was a massive attempt to cover it up.
Alex's family has had enough. In 2022, they and their legal team contact the Daytona Beach Police Department again, urging them to conduct a more thorough investigation. The department immediately puts up barriers. Through a public records request, Alex's family obtained this email from a lieutenant in the department notifying another lieutenant that an attorney for Alex's family wants to review the evidence. The lieutenant responds, "We have done our due diligence. We will no longer go down this road, so you can tell him his request is denied." The department further determines there is no proof or evidence of any criminal wrongdoing on the part of John Burlein. They close the case again. A few months later, in August 2023, John is disenrolled from the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps at Embry-Riddle. According to Air Force records, it is due to his involvement in a major misconduct offense alleged in the death of another cadet. But still somehow, the Daytona Beach Police Department doesn't find it necessary to take another look at the case.
The Daytona Beach PD, to this day, has never formally interviewed the only person who was home alone at the house at the time of the shooting. No formal interview.
You know what else the police department has never done? Were Alex's fingerprints ever found on the gun?
That's $1 million question.
The department has never tested 5 fingerprint swabs taken from the rifle.
It's still in the sealed envelope inside the evidence box. 5 separate DNA swabs from the trigger guard, the barrel, an unused round inside the magazine. Okay, so 5 DNA swabs.
So those swabs have never been tested?
Never. Till this day, never been tested.
Daytona Beach Police say they don't think that's necessary. We know that because in 2021, the homicide detective on Alex's case wrote in an email to another member of the department that the rifle swabs were not sent for testing due to the fact that they were of no evidentiary value.
So they were pertinent enough to collect DNA evidence, but not test it?
This could be a critical point of evidence, and it's not being done. Lourdes and Harold decide the only way they can get this evidence really looked at is by a jury. So they file a federal civil lawsuit against John for wrongful death, claiming that he shot and killed Alex and covered it up with the help of his father. A pivotal piece of evidence, according to Alex's family and legal team, a Ring camera clip captured just seconds after the gunshot. The only reason the footage exists is because of the American flag mounted on the house stirring in the wind. It triggered the camera, and in the eerie silence that follows the shot, a voice can be heard. According to the forensic audio analyst, the voice says, "Alex is dead."
The jury told us that all 8 of them unanimously agreed that they clearly heard Alex is dead. There's only one person who could have been speaking inside the residence at that time, and that was John.
In December 2024, a jury agrees that John committed battery against Alex, which resulted in Alex's death. They award Lourdes more than $4 million in damages.
I am extremely happy because after 40 years of pain, suffering, and struggle to have somebody hurt us.
How did it feel when that decision came down?
We have been fighting for 5 years to show that somebody shot my son. And finally, somebody besides us is seeing it.
A jury.
A jury. A jury of 8 people.
8 unbiased people.
John Burlein is appealing the jury's decision and is requesting a new trial. Following the verdict, the police department releases a statement saying the Volusia County Medical Examiner is solely responsible for determining Alex's cause of death. The department says, "We acknowledge that the crime scene was not preserved as promptly as it should have been, and this is a procedural shortcoming we regret. However, this did not affect the determination by the medical examiner regarding the manner of death." The department goes on to say that while it has no plans to reopen the investigation, it will cooperate fully with any state or federal agency that may decide to review the matter further. And that's what Alex's family and friends are looking for an outside law enforcement agency to get involved and investigate how the Daytona Beach Police Department handled the case.
We need to figure out what happened with the investigation. We need to figure out where Daytona police went wrong. They did such a horrible job of handling this investigation.
You think there should be an investigation of the investigators?
Yes.
The thing was, they were making conclusions based on no evidence.
And for some reason, the police think that once I've reached my decision, then that's it. That's the last. This is not right.
We need to hold accountable the police department for the negligence and they haven't done what they need to do. I don't want another mom or another person to go through the nightmare and hell that I'm going through. I'm not gonna let go until there is responsibility taken and until there is actually justice. Mm-hmm.
As we've uncovered more about the circumstances surrounding the death of Alex Bello-Ortiz, one thing remains clear. Alex's family believes that critical mistakes were made in the investigation and that those mistakes should be corrected. We'll continue to track this case in hopes of getting to the truth of what really happened to Alex Bello-Ortiz. I'm Kristin Thorne for Law&Crime Investigates.